Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next installment of the Football Experience here, brought to you by On the Pod. I'm Caleb. He's Nev. Nev, how you going, mate?
Pretty good this morning, and you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. I've not much to report really, so I think we should get straight into the thing that's been weighing on my mind, and I want to ask you this: if there was a revolution by any other living creatures, so that could be insect, animals, whatever on Earth, which one do you think would pose the most threat or be the worst for humankind?
So you're saying that they become able to think cognitively, like more like us? Is that
Yeah, well, their main focus becomes on destroying the human race.
would
Do you want some time to think about that one?
well like the one that immediately pops to mind is like monkeys or apes because they have more strength than us, and you've already sort of seen what could happen in the Planet of the Apes movies, but I want to try and see if I can think of like a more out of the box type answer. But look at you've caught me off guard. Like you've thrown
I
me
know,
in the deep
definitely.
end.
You need some time. You need some time to think about it.
Yeah, but yeah, like that. The apes monkeys one comes into question or comes immediately to mind because that's they're stronger than us. Like a gorilla can just like rip you in half like as is, and they're already sort of smart as well. Like we've seen them
But
solve
it's
puzzles
it's
and stuff.
yeah. Also, though, it's not 1v1 battles. It's all of ape kind versus all of humankind. It's a race war to destroy. So I don't know. I want to let you stew on that. If you have one at the end of the pod, great. But I reckon next episode.
Well, hang on. Like
And
I might have an answer now. Like, what about a cockroach? Because people say like a cockroach could survive a nuclear war. So
that's good. I
yeah,
think you're getting closer to my answer.
all right.
I would say ants would be the worst.
Ants.
Yeah, there's so many of them, and there's so many different varieties, and like they're everywhere, all over the world. So as soon as they want to mobilize, they can just take down the humans.
Yeah, but dude, have you tried killing a cockroach? Like
Yeah,
you
oh,
slam on
they're
it.
tough.
Yeah, you slam on it like, or you hit it with a slipper or something, and like you have to hit it like 10 times before it actually like stops wriggling around and stuff.
No, I definitely. It's not a fun experience having to kill a cockroach. But I think we should pick up this one maybe at the end of the pod, or maybe at the start of next pod or something, because I just think that's an interesting question. So I thought I'd throw a curveball at you, but I think we should get back to our day jobs and start talking about football. Uh, and I actually want to start at a place I didn't think I would really start a pod from, and that's Goodison. Everton. That result against Chelsea gives them hope after Burnley's result really looked to. Well, it looked like their Premier League survival were just embers at that point, but those embers sort of flourished into a somewhat fire after that win at Chelsea. And I got to say, I'm really encouraged to see. I wouldn't say proud because it's Everton and I'm a Liverpool supporter, but what the fans did and the atmosphere that the fans brought just really actually made me have respect for Everton for one of the first times in my life, to be quite honest. I know early Benitez days they challenged us somewhat, but I've never really seen them as that much of a threat. And a lot of the things that they do, I just haven't really respected that much. But in this battle, the way that they've come together, the way that they really ratcheted it up and they tried to help their team any way they could by distracting and disturbing Chelsea at the hotel the night before, the atmosphere of the buses coming in, I thought it was just fantastic to see. And for that alone, I thought that 1-0 result was warranted. So I just think just the way that they've all come together to not really turn on the team but push the team forward, I thought that was fantastic to see.
And like, it was a really surprising result as well. Like, I didn't watch the match, but like, I had that I had a Sunday of spring cleaning, so I didn't get to watch any matches until the Arsenal one on Sunday. But like, that, seeing that result was really surprising, and then it just made me think: can this then spur them on to actually fight out of relegation? Like, I think they still have a game in hand, but like that, this actually just makes it interesting, because if they have lost to Chelsea, I think that would have pretty much locked them out of surviving. And as you mentioned, like, the fans are there and behind them. I did see a little bit of the footage, and it seems like they're all united, and they're all behind the team, behind Frank as well. So if they can somehow survive, then it gives them that platform for next season.
Yeah, and we were talking about them, I think last pod or maybe 2 pods ago, and I think the tally you came up for them till the end of the season was 5 points, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, that tally will probably go up after this because you probably penciled him in for a loss in this game. But we're getting towards the end of the pod, so I don't want to drag it up too much. But I did just want to bring up that the Goodison factor might be a huge factor for them going down the season. But at that time as well, I knew that they were getting better results, definitely under Lampard at home than they were away. But obviously, I think after probably the Merseyside derby at Anfield, when they actually dropped into the bottom 3, I think that's when I know that they, like, for the neutrals and everyone observing outside, it looked like they could be relegated far before that. But that was the first time it really struck home for me, anyway, personally, that hey, they're in big trouble now. I mean, they were in somewhat trouble before, but they're in big trouble now. So yeah, like I said, for the way that the pressure ratcheted it up, and the fans and the sort of the blue half of the city just responded like that, I thought it really contributed to that team winning. And obviously, you're playing against a team who I think we should flip the coin over and look at the other side of the other side of the mattress. But Chelsea, I don't know what the future holds for Chelsea. I mean, and I really don't know. Obviously, no one knows what the future holds for anything, but I really don't know, because they are losing their whole defense, essentially. The center of that defense is pretty much all walking in the summer. They have a manager going through personal difficulties at the moment that I don't want to go into, obviously, because that's it. But that is what's happening. That's the reality of what's happening to him at the moment. And the whole club is going through difficulties in the whole sale. We don't know who the owners are going to be. We don't know how long this thing drags out for. Does it go into the transfer window where it impedes them doing business? How many players want to come to this club at this moment? Chelsea, I mean, it's not really going under the radar now because we know the difficulties, but coming into this summer, it's really starting to sort of have an exclamation point on it for me, that who knows where this club will be next season. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the Chelsea situation and the Chelsea future as well?
It's like you said, it's all up in the air because of the whole ownership, like, structure and everything that's going on. Because, like, if I just sort of mention the like, this is off topic, but like, I read something that with Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, apparently he won't actually be taking over for another 6 months because of all the paperwork involved with it and stuff. So if it's something similar with Chelsea, then that means that unless they have actual money sitting in the coffers, they're not going to really be able to buy players this transfer window. Then, if the new owners if they don't come in time, or if they aren't able to inject the funds in time because of all the paperwork that goes on around buying I think it's like a 3 billion pound club. Like that takes time for everything to be resolved. So like as you mentioned, like with them losing pretty much their whole defense, like they're losing Christensen, Rudiger, and are they losing Azpilicueta as well?
I don't know for sure, but it sure seems that way at this time.
Yeah. So is Marcus Alonso as well? Is he on his way out apparently, or?
I haven't heard anything on the Alonso front.
Okay, but they're essentially. I think I heard about Azpilicueta. I think he's leaving, or so. But they're definitely losing Rudiger and Christensen. Like we know that, and I know Christensen has sort of been in and out of the squad, but they're losing like two pretty big players and two players that have been sort of mainstays over the last couple of seasons for them. And yeah, it's gonna be definitely interesting to see how they go next season regarding whether or not they can actually purchase players this summer. Because if they can't purchase players, I think that then opens the door for potentially United challenging for top 4 earlier than what we'd expect as well.
Oh, definitely. And the other club that we'll touch on, and we already have touched on, I mean, what happens with Newcastle as well, especially if Chelsea all but drop out of the race. I don't think they can drop out of the race because they still have good players there. But that if we just look at just purely the footballing side of things, because the rest is just speculation in terms of when it will be finalised, if they can be spending money, whatever it is. Like, assuming that they keep Tuchel in charge and then they keep the majority of their players, apart from the ones we know about, the fact that you're, well, essentially, probably the only player who doesn't start in Chelsea's best back three is Christensen behind Thiago Silva. So now you've lost two of your three, and Azpilicueta is massive for that back three because he's that type of third centre back who is a former fullback who offers that balance. And Rudiger's great in a back three because he can be his eccentric self and he can be really aggressive in a back three. And obviously that protects Thiago Silva, who's the older legs who can organise around him. Thiago Silva's now the only one left, and he's pushing 40. So, I mean, now what do you do? You put in Reece James as the third centre back? I don't think he'd be happy to do that. You're bringing in Trevor Chalobah, who looks like a decent young player, but there's been big games. I know I think it was the League Cup final where he started against Liverpool. I thought he was the guy that you could get at out of that back three. Your best of the three centre backs is Rudiger. So on the pure football side of it, to lose so many players in such a key position, the cornerstone position for me, really, in the whole team, is just it almost, well, it really does sort of, if they can't replace them, it does knock them out of any hopes of challenging for a title, and all of a sudden they're firmly entrenched in only challenging for top 4. And even that might be a bridge too far if Arsenal finish in there, and can get the funds to bring in new players. But not even looking to next season. I mean, Arsenal are now 3 points behind them, and Tottenham are only a further 3 points behind that. And Chelsea have just lost to Everton, and I know the fans and the crowd did such a great job at pushing that team, but that's still Everton. They were still in wretched form, and they're still in the bottom 3. So there's no givens in the last 4 games for Chelsea. They actually are, and I said it after the West Ham game. I thought, all right, now they'll comfortably finish top 4. But again, they're still in a top 4 battle to be in the top 4 this season. I mean, to think that Arsenal could finish above them this season is just a crazy thought. So I guess what I want to know from you is well, I can't even ask that because we don't know if they're going to be able to sign players. I was going to ask on any centre backs they should be targeting, but first question I think we got to address: do you think they'll hold on and finish in this top 4 with 4 games left?
Just want to have a look at their run in before I answer that. So they have They have Wolves at home, and Wolves they've sort of fallen off their top 4 challenges. They pretty much fell off after the back-to-back Arsenal defeats. They got Leeds. Leeds are playing at home. That could be a tough game for them, just because Leeds are in that relegation battle. Then they have Leicester at home, and then they have Watford at home as well. So yeah, like they should lock the top 4. I think like that shouldn't really be a question or anything that's really up for debate, unless they, especially with the FA Cup final coming up, like players should be playing out of their skins to get into that starting 11 for that FA Cup final, unless there's like obviously behind the scenes that that we don't know, but obviously being part of the change room, players already know essentially who Tuchel wants and who he trusts as his starting 11, especially for those big games. So those games against Wolves and Leeds, they might not necessarily be auditions for Tuchel, because maybe his starting 11 is already set in his mind for that Liverpool final. But you would expect them to pick up. I think they only need like what, three points potentially, 6 points to lock top 4.
I think what really helps them is the fact that Arsenal and Tottenham are playing each other, so they have to take points. Yeah. So I totally agree. I think that West Ham win did enough, but I mean, again, we're still got to ask the question because mathematically they're not there, and there's still enough time to be caught.
Yeah, like you're right in asking that question. Like the wheels could completely fall off, but you wouldn't expect them to, especially against the teams that they're playing as well.
And I guess that brings me to the next point where the wheels fallen off, because remember when we started these pods, which is 10 episodes ago, whatever it is. I firmly had Chelsea as the third best team in the world, quite firmly, when we started doing these, and they have. I couldn't tell you, and this brings me to a theme actually, because we've seen in the Bundesliga the top 2 lost on the weekend. And Bayern, I didn't watch the game, but Bayern apparently looks on holiday, as you might expect. Juve have been terrible for a while. I mean, Napoli fell off, but I guess they were still fighting for something. But in Spain, we've seen Atletico have absolutely fallen off a cliff, and they're firmly entrenched in a battle for top 4. I believe Betis have a game in hand where they could go level on points, but Betis only took a point on the weekend. But this Sevilla fell off over there as well, Barcelona in recent weeks. So it's almost like what's happening with these teams who a lot of those teams were either mentioned in our top 8 or just outside our top 8. But now the stock of all those teams who aren't challenging for anything, because I think the only 3 teams that you could be impressed by at the moment are Liverpool, Man City, and Real Madrid. I couldn't put any other team in that list at the moment because Villarreal are in the semi-finals of the Champions League, but their league form hasn't been very good. Serie A has been a very up and down race, and AC Milan are leading that race, but they got knocked out in the group stage of the Champions League, and they got knocked out finishing bottom of the group. So, I mean, that gap for me, who do you see bridging that gap to those 3 teams at the moment? Because it doesn't look like it will be Chelsea. And this overall pattern of teams that aren't in contention for things just falling away at this stage of the season.
The one that comes immediately to mind is Bayern, just because they have that knack of being able to rebuild. Like they have just such a solid structure and foundation at the club, and they have their lull period where they sort of falter in Europe for a season or 2, and then they come back and they're already like in the semis or even in the final. Like we saw that. We've seen that over the past like 10 years. Like they reach the final against Inter, they lose it. Was the Inter final before or after the? I think that was before the Chelsea final, wasn't it? So like they lose to Inter, and then they lose again to Chelsea.
Yeah.
But then they beat Dortmund. Was there another one that they won in that time, or was the next one that
No.
with Flick?
Next one was with Flick.
Yeah, but they go away for a couple of seasons, but they're always up there challenging, pretty much. But they do have that sort of stumbling block with it because they need to refresh the squad and rebuild it. And I think with Nagelsmann, they have a young manager that's building his stock and building his reputation and his experience, and you would expect them to kick on next season, especially after faltering in the Champions League 2 seasons in a row, at the quarterfinals as well. So, like
I totally agree with that. I think Bayern are almost their own subcategory of not quite in that top 3, but not with the likes of Chelsea now, with all this uncertainty and the Serie A leaders and the rest of the teams in La Liga. I think Bayern are above that at least. But we mustn't forget that Lewandowski's not going to sign a new contract. So who's the replacement there? That's the first point. And the second point for me on Bayern, and I like the fact that Nagelsmann's already such an established coach at such a young age. I think the sky can be the limit for him. But what we saw with him at times, I've just noticed it creeping in. And this performance doesn't help where you can't respect your opponent enough to show up and put in a decent performance. I know you're champions, so you're doing it from that place. But at the same time, it's sort of that and the way that they handled themselves in the Villarreal tie, not just Nagelsmann, but pretty much all of Bayern, the arrogance. It just reeks a little bit of arrogance. And I know you're Bayern Munich and you have that sort of, you should have that arrogance, but not in this way, and especially not when you can't back it up. Because when you cross the line from confidence in your abilities and in your stature or whatnot into arrogance, football has a funny way of biting you in the ass. And we've heard the sound bites, so no doubt the Villarreal squad heard the sound bites going into that tie about how we're trying to wrap this one up as quickly as possible. Whatnot. It's ridiculous things to say, really, about a quarterfinal in the Champions League when, in most people's eyes, you weren't even the best team in the world. So why are you saying that? You're not defending champions either. You've really got no right to be saying anything like that. I thought that was concerning, to say the least. And then this performance, I mean, if I'm Bayern Munich and I'm a big club, I don't care that I've won the title. I don't want to go out and lose 3-1 to Mainz. I mean, we're meant to be the champions. Let's play like it for the last couple of games. So that arrogance and that little bit of uncertainty about their talisman leaving, Thomas Muller getting a year older, who Sula's leaving, who they're going to get in at centre back. I just think the top 3 are operating from positions of more strength. When you look at Real Madrid, who might be getting in Kylian Mbappe, they should be getting in Rudiger as well. I believe that's where he's meant to be gone. So, and then Liverpool and City, I think, are widely accepted as 1A and 1B by most observers, and they have the 2 managers I think every player would want to play for if they had to choose. Maybe some of the older players would choose Ancelotti, and we'll probably touch on him a bit later. But I just see that top 3 is starting to divide itself. I mean, everything could change in the summer, but everything could also cement itself in the summer in the fact that those top 3 make good signings and push on to the next level even.
Yeah, I think you have a point there. Like, especially with City and Liverpool, like, because they've like Klopp and Guardiola have already been there for what, like five seasons. So they're already starting to move into that like foundation territory where they're moving into, like, possibly, if they stay for longer, which Klopp will be, because didn't he sign it was a 3 or 4 year extension?
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about that a bit later as
well.
Yeah,
So like, you have two clubs where those foundations they're starting to sort of shift into that Wenger, Ferguson territory, and you mentioned Ancelotti at Real, and he's just like probably one of the best man managers going around. And yeah, they should be getting Mbappe, but I did hear that apparently he might be staying at PSG. So even that one's up in the air. So it really just depends whether Real can sort of like refreshen their squad a little bit. But like the addition of Rudiger will be a massive help, because I'm not sure whether I want Alaba going back to a left back. But it would probably also give them the option of playing with a 3 with Alaba, Milito, and Rudiger then instead of a 4. So it probably does open the door to a slight tactical shift as well with the signing of Rudiger.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess while we're talking about these three teams, we should probably get back to a little bit of what happened on the pitch, where we saw both City and Liverpool win their games. I don't know if you caught. Did you catch both of their games?
Yeah, I caught both of them. I thought that before I get into it, I just want to say like the Leeds fans are an absolute bloody disgrace. Like I had to stop short of swearing then, because you saw what they were doing throughout the game.
The paper.
Oh, like yeah, and just littering onto the field and throwing it at the players and stuff. Like, but like it's not like you're pretty much like it looked for like picture wise, it looked horrible seeing that much garbage on the pitch and like around the pitch and stuff. Like, and that's your home stadium. Like, why the hell are you doing that? Like, I understand that you're upset with how your team is playing, but it just, the optics of it just look absolutely horrible. Like it makes them seem like a non-league club almost, like the way that it looked. Like just seeing all that garbage around the pitch and stuff, and then the way they behaved, and like if like I'm really strong like against littering and also like graffiti, especially graffiti as well. Like honestly, like, and because there's so many cameras around the pitch, I reckon they should do, like, honestly, just go through an investigation and fine every single one of those people like £500 or £1,000. Like, make it hurt so that they've done it once and they won't do it again, because that was an absolute disgrace what they were doing.
Ooh, Nev's hot on the paper throwing. Woo.
Well, like,
jeez,
like I know, like over the last couple of weeks, like we've seen incidences of like bottles being thrown at players by the fans and stuff, and you know,
that's definitely different. That can do
damage. I know that can do damage, but like the optics of it are bad as well. But it's one bottle. Like this was literally like you almost can't walk through it, or like you're walking through. Like, and like, yes, it's paper, like whatever, but like the look of it, like just seeing all this trash all around the pitch as well, and on the pitch as well. So like, and in a couple of instances it did put a little bit of a delay on the game as well. And yeah, like it's just, and considering that it's your home ground as well, like you want to keep that as pristine and like clean as possible, and they're not treating it the way that it should be treated. So yeah, those fans are an absolute disgrace.
We went in hard. Look, I agree. I mean, I don't agree. I'll stop short of absolute disgrace, but I don't understand it. I mean, what's the benefit of throwing some paper onto the pitch? I mean, especially if it's going to start to delay play.
They even threw it at their own players. They even threw it at one point. I think
it didn't.
Yeah,
it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. I don't understand. I'll stop short of absolute disgrace, but it's just a bit silly. I don't really get it. But on a side note, you definitely should not watch. I believe it was the 2019 Copa Libertadores final. Boca playing River in the two-legged tie. The tie at La Bombonera got delayed for like an hour and a half because they threw too much paper onto the pitch. You know how the Argentinian fans love to throw their paper? They
Yeah.
threw too much paper onto the pitch and they couldn't. They got all the leaf blowers out. They just could not clear it up because there was so much on the pitch that they couldn't start the Copa Libertadores final on time. In fact, like it was delayed for like over an hour. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I thought that was a funny side note. So I haven't been able to find it on YouTube for some reason, but if anyone can find it, just leave it in the comments. That'd be great. I want to watch that again. I'm pretty sure I didn't dream it.
Yeah, it might be one of those like
But
Mandela effect sort of things.
yeah, exactly. Maybe I was just like, oh, Argentinian fans, paper. Yeah, like, my brain made that association. But going back to the action on the pitch and not the leaf blowers and the paper. Just go through. I'll let you decide which game you want to start on, or if you want to wrap it on both of them together. But what you saw from the two chasing the title in England.
Look, City didn't seem like they played all that well, and I think the scoreline was a little bit flattering for how they played over the whole 90. Like winning 4-0, I thought 2-0 was definitely deserved and a reflection of the game, but then for them to just blow them out and win 4-0, that was, it's a good on them, but it doesn't truly reflect, I guess, how the game went. Because Leeds definitely did have their chances. I think they had a chance in the first opening minutes as well. I think was it Laporte that slipped? I think that.
Cancelo. Yeah, Cancelo.
Yeah, Cancelo. Yeah.
Not Rafinha. Rodrigo just too slow, too indecisive.
Yeah. So and Leeds had a couple of chances throughout the game as well. And I think they were starting to really pile on the pressure around 2-0. There was 5 or 10 minute period where they were piling on the pressure, and then City just managed to get 2 quick goals. In the final 10 or 15 minutes. And after that game, I actually had a look at the goal difference, and I think there's only 1 goal in it. Before, I think 2 or 3 games ago, there was a 14-point goal difference, and people I think Carragher was saying, oh yeah, if they finish level on points, Liverpool has such a superior goal difference, and now it's literally City's on 63 and Liverpool's on 64. The only so not even goal difference can really separate them. Goals against, there's 1 goal in it, and goals for, there's 2 goals. These teams are so close to each other. It's absolutely insane that they not only just the points but also the goals as well and the defense to back it up. Insane. And I'll with the Liverpool Newcastle game. Newcastle, it didn't seem like they posed too many problems, but at the same time, it didn't seem like Liverpool really firing or on all cylinders. They didn't really kick into gear. They definitely created chances, and Newcastle played decently, but Newcastle couldn't really get into that final third from what I can remember of the game, and it just seemed yep, job done. But this result, and how you mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, who will finish higher next season, Newcastle United, Newcastle, they're starting to compete against some of these sides, and if they can get a couple more signings and start to go on that sort of that Man City signing not trajectory, but sort of not policy either, but they sort of take the same route that City took. And if they can sign 1 marquee player, like City signed Robinho back when the Abu Dhabi group took over, that will then mark them to make the following signings to attract more players, even with them being out of the Champions League for next season. So they I think they're like one marquee signing away, and then maybe 3 or 4 backups. Like I think City in the same window, did they sign Company with Robinho as well? And Company was sort of no name at the time. And then I think the following window they signed David Silva, I think. So yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see how they go with that. But all in all, by City and Liverpool, job done by both of them. City did look better because obviously the more flattering scoreline, but they had an easier game on paper. But yeah, Liverpool didn't really seem like they exerted too much energy, and they didn't even field their strongest 11 really. They had sort of a makeshift midfield as well, so they managed to rest some players, which was good.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point at the end there as well, with Liverpool being able to rest pretty much the midfield. James Milner coming in and actually looking quite good for his age and his lack of involvement in recent weeks. On the City game, and like I'm not going to go too in depth. It was sort of on in the background more than anything. But you mentioned the fact that they didn't play all that well in Leeds. Leeds sort of took the game to them at points in the game. The amazing stat for a team like City, who we think of in this certain way, but they, in scoring those first 2 goals, both from set pieces, they became the leading team in the Premier League to score from set pieces this season, I think at 18 goals. And it was no surprise to see who was second on the list and who was joint top going into the day, and that was Liverpool. So you talk about we can't differentiate it by points, we can't differentiate it by goal difference. And I mean, the fact that we barely could differentiate it by set piece goals scored for teams that are this good and have so much dominance on games, to still be able to have set pieces in their arsenal as well. It's like, where's any chink in their armor? Where do they not score goals, these two teams? So I just thought that was really interesting. When you think of a Guardiola team, you don't think of scoring goals from set pieces, but they have 18 in the league this season, which is, it sort of shows the level that these two teams are on to even be top of that stat as well. When you'd probably look at like teams like West Ham, Burnley's, your teams like that would really rely on set pieces, but these two teams can do it that way as well. I think I don't know if you've heard Jesse Marsh talk and seen much of his like work at Leeds or whatever, and obviously another American coming into the Premier League, but he pretty much summarised that game in exactly the same way you did. Saw the same things in the game. And I think for me, I think it's kind of refreshing, a new sort of perspective on football. Sometimes he invokes what they do over in America in terms of what they do with their sports. So I think it's kind of fun to listen to him in post match or pre match press conferences, give a different perspective on, I mean, what is the global game of football. So that's kind of fun for me. When we shifting over to the Liverpool Newcastle game, and I sort of said this going in about, could Newcastle compete? Could they make a statement and get a good result or put in a good performance to sort of springboard their efforts into next season? I thought they got a decent result. Obviously, they lost the game, but the performance was somewhat lacking. I thought Liverpool. I thought again, much in the same way I was pleased with what I saw against Villarreal. I was very pleased with what I saw here. The only displeasing thing was that we didn't win the game by the 3 or 4 goals I thought our chances deserved. But the really pleasing thing was Newcastle had a half chance and a few offside chances, but they had a half chance with Guimaraes in like the 86th minute or something with a shot at the edge of the box that Alisson just comfortably caught. I mean, this looks more like the Liverpool of that 2018-2019 season that narrowly missed out on the title and went on to win the Champions League. This looks more like a solid defensive unit. They're not playing the games as open as they were And to still see them create what I thought were good chances against Newcastle on the weekend, I thought was really positive because obviously Newcastle going into the game, I think we're the second form team this calendar year or since some certain timeline, like 10 or so weeks back, whatever it is. So to put in that performance, I mean, the result wasn't great because obviously City came back at us with goal difference a little bit. But to put in that performance, I thought it was fantastic. And just finally, the last point, you talk about the goal difference and how it's not separated. Often when I look at the league table, once a fair bit of time has passed, I actually think that goal difference is the best way to determine which teams are the best teams in the league and which ones aren't. So you talk about that plus 63 and 64 or whatever it is for Liverpool and City at the moment. I think Chelsea are mid-20s, maybe 30s, and then there's a drop off to
39.
39. So there's a drop off between obviously Liverpool and City to Chelsea, which I think we've been saying at least for the last couple of weeks. And then there's another drop off from Chelsea to that 4. But obviously when you look at points, Arsenal are right behind Chelsea now. So, but it's just interesting. I thought that's an interesting. Obviously, I wouldn't want it changed or anything like that. But I just thought it's interesting when you look at tables that goal difference is oftentimes the best indicator of where teams are at, I feel, and just how they perform against their competition, I guess, because obviously in football you get these games where you create chances but you don't score and you lose 1-0, and sometimes that can happen, and then the intangible things like confidence and all of those outside and those mental things that we can't quantify come into it. So yeah, football's just fickle like that, and I just think goal difference could often be a fairer way of judging where teams are at. But I guess we should look at the table, having said that now, and look a little bit lower. And I know resident Arsenal fan here, and I'm going to give you the floor and perspectives on the game and just the broader picture for your club now.
It was actually a little bit surprising on West Ham's part to field almost their strongest 11, especially coming off of a loss against Frankfurt and then having to go to Frankfurt on Thursday. I know they're going to get enough rest, and like it's pretty much only across the channel that they need to travel. But I expected a much weaker side to be fielded by West Ham. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but it was good to see Arsenal put in a pretty solid result, especially with Ben White getting injured just before the game. I'm not sure how serious the injury is. I haven't read any updates on that. And then, like, us finishing the game with, I think we only finished the game with one of our 4 starting back 4. So Gabriel finished the game, but Tomiyasu had to get taken off after 70 minutes. And like for him to play 70 minutes after, I think he didn't play since January as well because he had that niggling calf injury. So hopefully him coming off was more of a precaution rather than that injury reoccurring. And, you know, you talked about set pieces, and both our goals came from set pieces. Their goal was a little bit fortunate that it took a deflection off of Gabriel, but at the same time, we were being put under pressure, and Gabriel could have defended that better by trying to close down. Instead, he just sort of made his body big and tried to block the shot rather than closing down the space that was there, and that's why it's obviously like what led to the goal. But overall, I'd say that it was a very mature performance. It wasn't a great performance, like, you know, something that was like flashy or anything like that, but it was more of like one of those sort of grind out results. And to do that against West Ham, at West Ham as well, like definitely solid, and it definitely puts the pressure back onto Tottenham, because Tottenham, going into that game, Arsenal was actually sitting in 5th. So they had the pressure on them to put in a result. And with Tottenham going to Liverpool this weekend, that's going to play into our hands even more, considering that we've knocked off now in the past 3 games, we've knocked off Chelsea, United, and West Ham, like all teams around that top 6, top 7, and yeah, the results where it seems like we're starting to pick up some form now towards the end of the season, which could be enough to secure that top 4.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. And I remember talking with you on the pod a while back about, I think we were just talking about the run-ins for the top 4 chasers, and we pinpointed this stretch of Chelsea, United, and West Ham for Arsenal as it was going to be mightily important. I guess it took on more importance after they lost the 3 in a row, but to have picked up 9 points from those 3 games, I don't think you could be happier. You can't do any better in these games. So that puts them in not an unassailable position, because you're going to stop me from saying things like that about the top 4 race. But I mean, at this stage, obviously, most of us think that, we both think that Arteta's ambition this season would have been to challenge for top 4. It's gotten to the point now that they're in such a good position. It would be a major disappointment if they didn't finish in that top 4. And if they didn't, it could even have a hangover effect going on, because that's how big a disappointment and how strong a position they are in now. So looking at it, the fact, and you bring up that excellent point that Tottenham have to go to Anfield. Obviously, there has to be a little bit of worry that could go either way. That could move the needle either way for Tottenham, where it could be that that point gap going into the North London derby is quite wide now, and anything other than a win in that game would extinguish their hopes. But it also could mean that Tottenham could go to Anfield, and even if Arsenal win their game as well, they remain only 2 points behind, and all of a sudden they have this confidence that they beat a team like Liverpool at Anfield, and they're going into the North London derby. So there definitely won't be any apprehension about facing Arsenal if you can do that to Liverpool at Anfield. So obviously in football, that's got to be a possibility in a team as good as Tottenham. And if you want that hope as a Tottenham supporter, you only have to look at Tottenham's performance at the Etihad earlier in the season that really opened the title race. To be able to go there with that game plan, that typical Conte game plan, and then have a masterful Harry Kane performance to get you all 3 points at the Etihad. I mean, you've got to believe that you can do that again. Obviously, Liverpool's a totally different challenge, but to have a world-class manager like that who can game plan like that must give the club confidence, particularly going into big games like this. So, I mean, I think it would be negligent of us to not acknowledge that tie for Tottenham, or that match day, could it have a swing either way? I mean, because if they beat Liverpool at Anfield, for me, I think I would put, depending on how it went, obviously, but I would have to put them as favourites in that North London derby if they could do that to Anfield, and then they roll into a game that important. I believe the week after, straight after, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's even midweek. And what you're saying about that sort of, or what you're alluding to with that sort of confidence boost, I just want to ask the question. I heard it being asked on the good old, the famous AFTV. The question was, would you have rather won the 3 games against Palace, Brighton, and Southampton, and knowing that you'll lose against United and Chelsea, or would you rather have it gone the way it has gone, where you've lost the 3 games and won the 2 games. And I know that, it's 9 points versus 6 points, but it's also confidence as well. Like, you beat Chelsea, the team that's sitting third, the last year's Champions League winners, the FIFA Club World Cup winners. And then you beat United, who, yes, they're in the dumps this season, but it's still Manchester United. Like, it's still a team full of star players, even though they're not behaving or playing like a star team. So, that ties in perfectly. Like, if Tottenham were to then get a result against Liverpool, like, that would just give them the massive confidence boost going into the North London derby. But now, where Arsenal is on that sort of confidence boost after taking Chelsea's scalp, after taking United's scalp, and now even I put West Ham in there as well. So what would you rather, in that scenario? Like, just we'll hold the West Ham game out, so we have it as 6 points versus 9 points. But in regards to that question, so what would you rather?
Yeah, well, the fact that you're leaving the West Ham game out, for me, puts it in. I would rather have 9 points over 6 points, because that's a whole extra 3 points at this stage of the season is important. But I think a better question would probably be to ask. You could win all 3 of the games that we've just had: West Ham, Man United, and Chelsea, and instead of losing the other 3, so that it's we're exactly where we are, maybe you get 1 point out of those 3 games against Palace, Southampton, or Brighton. I think that would be a harder question for me to answer, because obviously on the one hand, you get that 1 extra point from those games before, but at the same hand, I would rather have, and then you lose, or however it'll work. I don't know how to format the question, but if you could have 1 extra point basically, and just change the order of how these games happened, I think I would still choose. I would still choose to have the 1 less point and the 3 wins that they've just had, for that thing that we're talking about, the momentum factor, especially when you only need that momentum to see you through for the next 4 games. I would choose to have that, especially the wins against the caliber of club, the name of club, the size of club, and their relevance on the table. I would take that over having an extra point. But that would be a harder one for me to answer, because the 3 points really does make a difference for me. Although I get why it would be a question.
Yeah, so the thing is with that, like, it's obviously 3 points is massive. Like, would you rather 9 points or 6? But then it's momentum as well, because you're going off of 2 wins against 2 top teams going into the West Ham game. Like, had we have lost against Chelsea and United, we probably would have lost this game against West Ham, but we managed to grind out the result because we managed to get 2 big results against Chelsea and United. And yeah, the question is then points on the board. Like, now it's 9 points versus 9 points if you take the West Ham game into consideration and play it against the Brighton, Crystal Palace, and Southampton results. But yeah, like, if you sort of reframe it where maybe you pick up 1 point out of those first 3 games, and then, so it's really 1 point difference rather than 3 points. So it's really hard, because had we have then lost against West Ham, so we lose 3 on the bounce now, going into Leeds who are fighting relegation, and then going into the North London derby, we could have had 3 losses and then a draw or another loss going into the North London derby. So if we can then get another win against Leeds, that's 4 wins on the trot going into the North London derby, and 3 of those games were absolutely massive against big teams who were up there at the top of the table, and that would then put us favourites in the North London derby, I'd say. Whereas if we lost those 3, I wouldn't have any confidence at all going into that Tottenham game.
Yeah, definitely. That momentum thing's a huge factor, and all this talking, I know, and I'm in a torn position between my football My love of football and love of seeing important games in a football sense, and obviously my love of Liverpool. In fact, I'm not torn. I want Liverpool to beat Tottenham because it's crucial for them too. But if we didn't have the jeopardy on that game, I'd almost want to see Tottenham win that game just so that the North London derby means that much more. So I'm just hoping we get to that North London derby and there's only 2 points in it. So I guess in that sense, I'm hoping Arsenal lose this weekend. I'm sorry. But yeah, as a football fan, I just want that game to have everything riding on it because I think that'll be a fantastic spectacle. And the last head-to-head game in the Premier League that actually matters, because I know Liverpool and City are fighting for the title, but they don't play each other. So this is the last head-to-head where everything could almost be decided on it. So I'm hoping it's in a position for that to happen. So I guess touching on Tottenham, the interesting stat that comes out of this weekend, or not touching on Tottenham, but touching on a broader Premier League topic, but the interesting stat coming out of this weekend is Son Heung-min has now scored more goals from open play than Mo Salah this season. Yet Mo Salah walks away with the Football Writers Player of the Year award. So that's an easy one to ask. Do you think Mo Salah's Player of the Year award was deserved?
I think it was like I truly believe if he didn't go away and exert himself at the Africa Cup of Nations and also face that disappointment of losing the final and then like a couple of weeks later not qualifying for the World Cup, I think he wouldn't have had this dip in form, and then the whole goal thing wouldn't even be a talking point at this point because he probably would have then kept on scoring for Liverpool. We can both agree that he's had a dip of form, but I think that he's starting to slowly come back, but it's still not the Salah that we saw before the Africa Cup of Nations. So, but if he can, obviously, like now in the final, 5 games or 6 games, all up, including the FA Cup final and potentially the Champions League final. If he can then kick on in these last couple of games, then it's 100% deserved. And like players always have their dip in form. Like wasn't Son had a dip in form back? I can't remember. Was it back in January or was it earlier than that? So where Tottenham weren't really flying at all. Even Kane as well. Like he's only now started to find some form as well. Like he started the season horribly. So yeah, if you look at the season as a whole, I think it's deserved.
This one for me is sort of it's one where two things can be true. I believe that Mo Salah deserves the award, but that doesn't mean I don't think that others deserve it equally or more than him, in fact, but not much more. So when you look at it, top scorer in the league still, and I think it's 42 or 44 goal contributions this season. So obviously he's had a phenomenal season, and the start of season form was best in the world form. He was so good to start the season, absolutely electric, scoring wonder goals every week it seemed, and just playing with that same energy to score goals, but even having this sort of excitement factor to him, more so than normally, where he was weaving in and out of players and scoring fantastic solo goals. Obviously, that one at City was just tremendous. But for me, having watched, I think, pretty much every Liverpool game this season, it all turned on that missed penalty at Leicester in one of only 2 games that we've lost this season. For me, that was the turning point for Salah. That's where he's sort of became the Salah that we've seen for the last 5 months now, where he's not able to score unless it's from the spot. He's still a danger, don't get me wrong, but he's not finishing the chances he was finishing at the start of the season, and Whether that's defenses against him or whether that's him being run down, because he's played an awful lot of football, it feels, this season. And then obviously, as you rightly touch on it, those having to play, obviously, the AFCON, having to play it, but B, the disappointment of losing in the final to his teammate Sadio Mane, and then the disappointment of being knocked out of the World Cup by his teammate Sadio Mane. So the form is not concerning because he's still a really good player even in this form, but it's not what we saw at the start of the season, that's for sure. And then you look at players like Kevin De Bruyne, who maybe doesn't have the numbers, but the play, the eye test, when you watch him, he's so good to watch. And City look like a much better team when he's in. I mean, just in terms of watching him, they have this player who draws your eye. Another one who I've been giving credit to recent weeks, Bernardo Silva, I think definitely deserves a shout. You look at Phil Foden, who probably should win Young Player of the Year, but would probably be on the ballot for both. He'd probably finish high in Player of the Year as well. I'm not sure if they release where the players finished. Ruben Diaz, that injury probably took him out, but he's fantastic. João Cancelo probably deserves a mention. That's obviously just from City, but I think the one for me, and I know Guardiola always gripes about it, Liverpool players winning the individual awards, but the fact is, Pep, you develop teams that are built on the system that you want them to play and built on control, so you're not letting the individuals showcase qualities like Liverpool do. It's not in the same way. I mean, obviously your system is a lot built around Kevin De Bruyne, and thus he looks fantastic. But the other players have to be functional to your system, and it's almost like I said with Chelsea winning the Champions League last season. The system is the winner. You have fantastic players within that system, and you play to their strengths. But really, the whole team and the whole system is the winner for City. Whereas Liverpool will make the game more open and will showcase more of the individual characteristics that their players have, like a Mo Salah, like a Sadio Mane. So, and that leads me to the player who I think was probably most deserving of winning the award, which is an individual award. Given how I've spoken about Liverpool in recent weeks, about how they've shifted the balance from your star players often being your attackers, which obviously Mo Salah still is the star player, but for me, the star player has been Alisson in goal, because that's quantifiable in terms of his one-on-one saves. If you didn't have that guy in there, you would concede this many more goals. I think I saw a stat of his saves compared to expected goals. I'm not sure exactly how they worked it out, but he was topped by a considerable margin in terms of one-on-one saves, where it's almost a certain goal. So for me, especially in the recent weeks, which has coincided with this run of form Liverpool have had in going for the title, for me, I think Alisson is slightly more deserving of Salah. I wouldn't put Van Dijk there, and it's unfair on Van Dijk, but it's comparing to himself, and that 18-19 season, he was almost another level to what he's been this season. And this season he's been fantastic, don't get me wrong, but that 18-19 season, I don't know if I've seen a defender defend not better, but in that way, in terms of Liverpool was still quite open in that time, and they relied on him to defend a lot of 1v1 situations. The way he did it, the way he ate people for breakfast, and he still does in the physical aspect, is a really scary sight to see, if you're an attacker. But for me, I think I would put Alisson just above Salah for winning that award. I don't know if you have any further thoughts on an individual award like this.
No, I think your shout for Alisson is actually pretty good, and I did see that that stat, and yeah, he was like he was in double digits, I think, for saves, but whereas like the next highest goalie was like at 6 or 7, like expected saves or something like that. Whereas Alisson was like, I think like double their expected saves. But yeah, like the ones that you mentioned, and how you also mentioned with City, because they play much more cohesive and as a team, It doesn't really allow star players to shine every single week. Like for one player to shine every single week, it seems like the load is shared. Like one week it might be Bernardo Silva, another week it might be Foden, another week it might be De Bruyne, another week it might be Jesus, like it was against Watford. Whereas, yeah, Liverpool just seems like it's always, at least from an attacking point of view, it's always going to be like all your front three get a goal and an assist in almost every single game, it seems. And like if you just look at the stats, like you have Salah with 22 goals, Jota with 15, Mane with 14. They're in the top 5. And just between them is Son with 19 and Ronaldo with 18. But then you look at assists, Salah has 13, so he has, in the league, he has 35 goal contributions, and then you have Trent Alexander-Arnold on 12 and Robertson on 10. So you have Liverpool with the top 3 of the 5 goal scorers, and then they have the top 3 assists as well. So it seems like there's the load isn't necessarily shared between the players like it is at City, and that's probably why you won't see City players really winning that award.
Yeah. And I guess before we move off the Premier League, the last bit of business while we're talking about Mo Salah winning Player of the Year is Jurgen Klopp signing a new 2-year contract, releasing the statement in his normal charismatic way with his jokes. That's just, as a Liverpool supporter, it's fantastic to know that I think we've now got him till 2026. No one's going to sack him, even if we finish outside top 4 for some inexplicable reason, like it looks like we would last season, in fact. But this guy's given us everything. He's taken us to this position now, and it's fantastic to have him for the foreseeable future as a Liverpool supporter. I guess 2 questions. Do you think this entices Guardiola to sign a contract extension and prolong the rivalry that City and Liverpool and him and Klopp have? And 2, are we getting back into Ferguson Wenger territory if that does happen, or are we getting into Wenger Ferguson territory just with Klopp extending now to 2026, which will take him to, I think, just over 10 years being in charge of Liverpool? So 2 interesting things to think of there. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm just looking at Pep's, profile now, and it says that his contract ends in 2023, so in the summer of 2023. So he has one more full season, and generally he stays at clubs for 3 years before moving on. So he's already been here since 2016. So he's already been here 6 years already. So 7 years. So he's already been here twice as long as what he has been at other clubs, and that's probably testament to how challenging he must find the Premier League. But it also might be the other question with that is, what other team would he go to where he'd get the same sort of challenge? Like if he goes to PSG, that's a guaranteed title. If he goes to Juventus, for instance, I'm sure he could get them back to winning 3-4 titles on the trot like they were a couple of years ago. So he'd get them back on top. If he goes to Barca, like I don't think he's going to Barca because they just appointed Xavi, and Xavi's touted to be like the next sort of Pep type manager, and he's sort of showing it, I guess, in his half season in charge thus far. And I can only really see. I hope that he extends it, and then we can start having that Ferguson Wenger debate, where they're going into that sort of territory, because that's gonna give us like another 3-4 years of complete dominance. And it's scary to, especially with Liverpool though, it's scary to think where they might end up without Klopp rather than where City might end up without Guardiola, because I think City have a better structure around the club in terms of who they have in like their recruitment and everything. And they also have obviously their sort of, I guess would it be a sort of franchise model where they own the team in New York, and then they own Melbourne City as well, and I think they have one more somewhere in the Middle East as well. So they own like a bunch of clubs, and I think they wanted to purchase one more as well. So like they can sort of.
They also have one in Japan. I can't remember who it is, but Ange Postecoglou used to manage there. So
yeah, so like they have this sort of infrastructure set up where they can, if they want to, they can like send players between those clubs and have these like recruitments between different nations and different regions and stuff. Whereas I'm not sure Liverpool necessarily has that sort of structure behind them. Like they definitely have a great structure right now, but what if it's mostly because of it's Klopp and his team rather than people that are still going to stay there once Klopp leaves? So Liverpool securing Klopp for another 3 years or 2 years that he.
I think it was 2, an extension of 2.
Yeah, so that's massive for you guys, because it's scary to think where you guys might go, where Liverpool might go when he does eventually leave, whether it's in 4 years' time or whether it's in 15 years' time, if he keeps on signing these extensions. But this rivalry between the two it's fantastic to watch, and as a neutral between the two clubs, and seeing more of Liverpool over the last couple of weeks, just because we're sort of getting to that close of the season and every game matters. It's amazing to see the level that both teams are playing at, and I hope that it continues. And but as I said at the start, I'm not sure where Guardiola would go, where he get that same sort of challenge that he gets right now at City in the Premier League, because it seemed like he sort of gets bored, because like at Barca it's only really Barca and Real, and then you sort of have Atletico there pinching at their toes, and then at Bayern it was just Klopp at Dortmund. I think it was only one season that they were that they had that rivalry when Guardiola first joined, or was it 2 seasons? But yeah, like he pretty much won the league every single year, and there was no challenge there. So that might be a big factor for Guardiola re-signing for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest factor. Well, there's two. There's 2 big factors. I think one is winning the Champions League with City. That's got to be massive, top of his agenda, because he's won everything else. The other one is this rivalry with Klopp. I think, and we've said this, and they've said this. It pushes them and their teams to be better. And I think this environment that these two have created by being so competitive with each other is really good for the managers involved. And I think Guardiola, like you say, because of that perceived lack of challenge anywhere else, would I think be somewhat foolish to go anywhere else. I think I would be interested in seeing the Juve challenge, but that is a rebuild. That Juve team is nowhere near a Champions League winning team at the moment. That's a huge rebuild. It's 4th in Serie A. And we've talked about how the title contenders in Serie A are more like top 4 contenders in the Premier League. So even that Premier League point you bring up is an interesting one. I can't see Guardiola, like the challenge at City isn't too different from that Barcelona challenge against Real Madrid and Mourinho. The nature of it is vastly different, because Mourinho was so Machiavellian in his attempts to stop Barcelona, and Klopp is almost so much more pure, and he just wants his team to be playing the best they can, so they go more toe to toe. But in terms of the competitiveness, it's not that different. But Barcelona could be another interesting one, but another thing I think that could motivate Guardiola is records, and we'll touch on a record from another all-time great manager just a little bit later. I did want to push back a little bit on where Liverpool would be out without Klopp, because I think I would have agreed with that maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago. But the faux pas of the European Super League aside, I haven't been more pleased with the ownership of Liverpool in my time supporting the club. I think FSG have done a fantastic job, I've got to say. Every major decision they've made to this point seems to have been the right decision. The decision to even bring in Brendan Rodgers to start the process was a good decision. And then the timing to get rid of him because a manager like Jurgen Klopp became available, I thought was the right decision. And getting Jurgen in, someone who resonated with the club, as we've seen, obviously their biggest and best decision so far. But another maybe unheralded decision, because when they came in, a lot of the talk was, well, they got to get a new stadium to compete. But I think the fact that they've kept Anfield was just such a great decision. You can't, as Liverpool Football Club, you cannot move away from Anfield. I think it's had an effect on Tottenham. I mean, I still think while that Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is fantastic to marvel at as a piece of architecture, they don't seem at home there yet. We saw it with West Ham moving to the Olympic Stadium. They don't seem at home. So that for me is the sneaky, brilliant decision that FSG have made to expand Anfield rather than move away. And that's one that will reap dividends long after Klopp's gone, the fact that they've stayed in Anfield. And then obviously the people they bring in for recruiting, they've made so many fantastic signings. The marketing side of things, I think they've gone to the next level in terms of the connections FSG can have in the American market. You see us now sponsored by Nike, which is a huge deal. You see us pairing up with athletes like LeBron James, as he has a stake in the club and he can market us further. And obviously they're both represented by Nike. So in every aspect, I think so far, barring the silly decision to join that European Super League, I think FSG have been fantastic. And it gives me at least belief that once Klopp goes, that we can still be a big club. While I couldn't be sure about that because Klopp's such a great person to have in charge of Liverpool and unify everyone. So I just wanted to push up back on that just a little bit. In terms of what we've seen in the contract extension, there was just one other point I wanted to make, because it's been reported, I believe, in the Athletic that Klopp is not actually taking a pay rise with this new contract extension, but the money that was going to be contributed to his pay rise, I believe, I don't know if it said he asked the club or the club took it upon themselves, but that's actually going to be redistributed to his coaching staff. And I know a couple of weeks ago we had that discussion about Manchester United and the philosophy and the culture that they sprout in giving these players who have not really won anything, like your Bruno Fernandez's and your Marcus Rashford's, these massive contracts. Whereas now you see it the other way. Jurgen Klopp actually is just like, I make enough money, but these guys maybe deserve a little bit more. And also, I'm just wondering, and I heard this in a podcast I was listening to, the Gab and Jules podcast. I think it was Gab made a really good point about what kind of knock-on effect would that have, seeing your manager say that he doesn't want extra money when we're in the midst of the Mo Salah contract negotiation. So I just thought maybe if he can lead like that, maybe others will follow. And again, for Mo Salah, much like Pep Guardiola, where the hell else is he going to go? I mean, Liverpool's the best club for him. It's made for him. He's had his greatest success in his career there. The fans love him. I mean, why the hell would you want to leave? So, and just finally, in terms of the styles of these two, I think Guardiola's maybe driven. Guardiola's the one I could see, if anyone was going to bolt, he would be the one to leave, because I think he'd be driven by records like winning leagues in other league titles in other countries. Whereas Klopp, for me, seems like the kind of manager who can only manage in the right situations, and Dortmund and Liverpool and Mainz have been the right situations for him. And right now, Liverpool is the perfect situation for him, because even as good as he got that Dortmund team, they were never to the level of this Liverpool team at the moment. So the city loves him. He's a club legend already. And if he wants to stay, he can stay as long as he wants. I don't know where else he could go, because obviously when you're a club this size, the only other one you could think of that could entice you would be maybe Real Madrid, but Klopp is not for me, the kind of character who resonates with Real Madrid. He's always been anti-elitist, in fact. So I think Liverpool's the perfect place for him, and he's made for this club, and the club's made for him, really.
You mentioned the wrong club in Madrid. That would be perfect for him.
Atletico.
I think that would be his next club if he was to leave Liverpool, because they have, as you mentioned, they're not elitist, and obviously Simeone has to move on for that to happen, which who knows when that will happen. But I think in terms of the passion and the culture of the club, I think that sort of fits his mold, the same way that Dortmund and Liverpool do. So out of that one springs immediately to mind of all the clubs that he could potentially manage at. I think another good one would be Napoli as well, because of how fanatical the supporters are. And I think Klopp thrives on that. The only problem with that is that their stadium is a bloody Olympic stadium, and it just sucks for it. It's good. They produce an awesome atmosphere, but imagine that without a bloody running track around the pitch. Like, imagine putting those fans inside a Stamford Bridge, where like you can literally touch the players when they're taking throw-ins or corners, or even like Anfield as well. Like those sort of compact, football-specific built stadiums.
Imagine Klopp in La Bombonera.
But yeah, like I think those two clubs immediately spring to mind in terms of like where would be the best fit in Italy and where would be the best fit in Spain. I don't know. I don't think France is as challenging for him, or it might not interest him as much as those two leagues, because those two leagues are stronger than France. And I just want to mention, like with your rebuttal to, like, you know, I don't think Liverpool will fall apart once Klopp leaves. Like they definitely do have that structure behind them. And like I don't think they'll falter like the same way that that United have when Ferguson left, because they're going into this is their 8th season without Ferguson now, and they still haven't been able to challenge really for the league title, except for that 1 year with Mourinho, sort of. But even that wasn't really really a challenge. It was sort of like.
Oh, remember that was City Centurions.
Yeah, so that was still. Yeah. But like I don't think Liverpool will go down that sort of path, but I think they will. They definitely won't be putting in the domination that they put in now. Like, remember a couple of years ago, you could win the league with 80 points, even like high 70s, you could win the league. Now you need 90 plus points to win the league against these two clubs. Once Klopp and Guardiola leave, I think it'll shift back to those days where you can win the league with low 80s and high 70s.
Yeah, and that will definitely be an interesting thing to see. One historical sort of thing we may be able to look at in terms of the succession of when Klopp finally does step aside and let someone else take the reins. But I mean, we've already, in Liverpool's history, they've already had a very well-known sort of succession plan put in place, and that is going from Bill Shankly to Bob Paisley. And it's actually Bob Paisley's won more trophies than Bill Shankly, but the guy that every Liverpool supporter and probably every football historian gives the most credit to is Bill Shankly. So in terms of the future for Liverpool, I mean, I've got my fingers crossed that becomes the case, and that we look back on this moment in our history and it's Jurgen Klopp gets all the credit, but if his number two in his Pep comes through and becomes the manager and then does a Bob Paisley and wins all the trophies because of the foundation that Klopp was able to leave, I think that would obviously be ideal for any Liverpool supporter. But I just wanted to point out that sort of if they wanted to try and follow history in that way, if it was even possible.
Hey,
But I guess,
just before we go
yeah,
on, and this thought did sort of cross my mind, even the other day before we started talking about this, and you mentioned succession plan. Like, you know how generally at companies, if you know that a team leader or a manager is going to move on, like either to another company or they're just going to retire, they have these sort of like succession plans, and like they hire from within the company. So like, and they train up someone. They already know like 6 months or even a year in advance, and they train up someone to take over, or even like years in the making. If someone's retiring, you know that they're going to retire at 60 or 70 or whatever, and they're training someone up to for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. How come we don't see that in football? Like, we always hire managers from outside of the club. That we don't. There's no internal succession plans at clubs. Like, there's always, all right, like Brendan Rodgers leaves or like gets replaced, but he's being replaced by someone outside the club. Ferguson left. He gets replaced by Moyes, who has nothing to do with United. Wenger leaves, and he gets replaced by Emery, who has nothing to do with Arsenal. So, what are your thoughts on that?
well, the thing is, for it to work, you have to be a manager like a Ferguson or a Wenger. You can't have a succession plan when the manager's only been there for 2-3 seasons. Because what are they succeeding? It's not like the foundation is built in stone of what that manager's left. Just mentioning those two that you mentioned about Ferguson and Wenger when they step aside, I thought looking back on it, the Ferguson one is the egregious one, where they, looking back, I know hindsight's 2020, but they really should have started planning for Ferguson's number two, whoever it was at the time, to look to be the next guy in the job, because Ferguson had well established what the culture it was around that time, and you saw it by the fact that he was getting that squad of players who, I'm going to say, they weren't like, as far as champions go, they were pretty average for champion. Because you could see it with Moyes coming in the next season and finishing sixth or seventh or whatever, and that squad looked about where they were. I mean, you had players like the aging Van Persie, and I think Darren Fletcher's still playing in there. They had players like this that they were relying on. John O'Shea's, the players like that. Ferguson just got a tune out of him because the culture at the club was so strong that I don't think it didn't seem from the outside look he did that he ever had to micromanage anything. So that one seemed like, your culture is strong. Why would you not get a number two in? The Wenger one, Wenger was, because of the way that Arsenal fans are and because of the results that they were getting at the time. I can't blame it all on the somewhat fickle nature of some Arsenal fans, but because of the results as well. The succession plan I didn't see working with Wenger, because I think everyone had had enough of Wenger by the time that was done, whereas Ferguson left as a champion. So the succession plan can work when you're on top and when you have a truly almost transcendent manager who can stay at a club for a while. So now I think it would be important for a club like Liverpool to look at succession plans if they ever got the word from Jurgen that he wouldn't be there for whatever season it is. Definitely, and especially because you only have to look at history, like I mentioned, and say, hey, this has worked before at this club. Why it would be foolish for us not to try it again. But yeah, in terms of your question, the succession plan, it needs the right conditions to work. So I think that's why we're not seeing it, because you really need a manager who is firmly established, almost as part of the history and the culture of the club. For me, for a succession plan to work, because that means that they've laid the groundwork. So yeah, but I thought that was a really good question. Just touching back on the point, you were talking about Klopp's destinations. I thought you hit the nail on the head with those two, in Napoli and Atletico. But And it was interesting that you mentioned the two leagues that he hasn't been at, because I think if we saw a move like that, because no doubt, especially at this certain time, Atletico are weaker than Liverpool. So that would be a move where he wants to build them up and win a league title. Same with Napoli. So that would almost suggest to me that he is now looking at sort of records like, and let's talk about this now, like what we saw. Maybe he would be very close to number one in most people's lists of all-time great managers. But Carlo Ancelotti has just succeeded in winning all 5 of Europe's major leagues, which is the first time in, I believe, in history that that's been done. And that is an incredible feat for an incredible manager. And I think to relate that back to certainly Guardiola for me, maybe Klopp, I could definitely see Guardiola being a manager who would want to emulate something like that, because that is truly an all-time great accomplishment from an all-time great manager for me, and Carlo Ancelotti.
I thought Mourinho would have gone for that one. So because he's already won 4. No, wait, no, he's won 3 as well because he hasn't been to Germany, has he? But yeah, look,
Germany and France.
Yeah,
if he ever got the PSG job, then that's almost a guarantee.
Yeah,
that's or the
Bayern. yeah, that's great. But I don't think Mourinho suits Bayern's model. I don't think they'd ever hire him. He suits PSG's model.
They get head coaches, not so much managers.
But even that, even just like the personality and the play style as well, I don't think Bayern would ever go for a coach like that, despite his previous winning record. Like, he has sort of fallen off that pedestal a little bit.
Yeah.
But PSG, that I think that could still be a destination for him, especially if he does well at Roma over the next season or two.
Can I well just before you go into Ancelotti and what you think of this accomplishment, but a sneaky little feeling, maybe not even a feeling, but just something I've pictured in my head, and I can see it making complete sense. Thomas Tuchel back to PSG.
Didn't he leave was he fired though?
I'm not 100% sure how that went down, but all I do know is that was the best moment in PSG's recent history in terms of them being mega rich.
Yeah, but it depends how much, I guess, integrity he has. But I like we've seen managers return back to clubs that they've been let go from. Like Ancelotti returned back to Real. Mourinho returned back to Chelsea. So yeah, we've seen it before. I think,
and Chelsea aren't in a great place, and PSG are looking for a manager.
Wait, does Pochettino left, or?
I believe the reports are he's getting fired at the end of the season.
Where's he going to go though? So he goes to Chelsea, and Tuchel goes to PSG.
Yeah, maybe, but Pochettino's stock is not the highest at the moment. I think Tuchel's stock's still quite high. And the thing, I think Tuchel worked at PSG because he's that type of manager who, for me, works with what he has. So he fits into that because PSG are obviously just going to buy the stars who are available. But he always gets the best. He always seems to get the best tactically out of stars. Because obviously he comes in halfway through Chelsea season last season and wins the Champions League because Chelsea did have good players there, and I could definitely see him doing the same at PSG, to be quite honest. So that's just not a feeling, but in my mind that makes sense.
It could, but obviously I think it depends on a couple of factors. Obviously, how much integrity he has, and also how quickly the new owners can settle and start spending money at Chelsea and recruiting players as well, because if it could end up being another sort of Lampard season where they have to rely on their youth academy, and like they have like 50 or 60 players out on loan as well. So they have the players to bring back to the club to sort of fill that void. If they go one or two transfer windows without being able to sign players, just because everything's getting resolved at the management level. But I don't know. I can't really see Tuchel going back to Chelsea, like from where I'm sitting. But who knows? Maybe he's getting really fed up with life at Chelsea, with everything that's going on above him, and yeah, who knows really.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you had any thoughts on Ancelotti, what he's accomplished in winning that league title with Real Madrid as well.
No, credit to him. And he's is he the most winningest Champions League manager as well? He's won 3, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think he is.
So
that's why.
Yeah,
he's got to be near number one for any list.
Well, if you talk about like I guess those achievements of being the first manager to win all 5 major league titles, and also him being the most winningest Champions League manager, he's definitely up there. Like, because Ferguson only won 2 Champions Leagues, but he won like 13 or 14 league titles. So
13, I believe.
Yeah, but I think even if you look at Ancelotti's league titles, that he has quite a few as well. He has like eight or 9, because he won a couple at AC, and then did he win 1 or 2 at PSG, and then he won 1 at Bayern or 2. I'm not sure how long he was there for.
Yeah,
and then he won one at Chelsea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then this is his first at Real. So yeah, he has like, his trophy cabinet would probably be similar to Ferguson in terms of league titles. It's just that he's gone about it a different way, going from club to club.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing about Ancelotti, and I think it's the thing that makes him probably my favourite manager that I've seen do their work in my time of intently watching football, and even reading stories about him. I've read his I think it's his autobiography. It might be his biography. But the flexibility, the almost lack of ego, and the trust in his players, and the willingness to adapt of Carlo Ancelotti, I think, to not marry himself to any notions of rigid sort of philosophy that impacts playing style, to only have really principles that would probably be more akin to how to live your life rather than how to play football. And to have the trust in the players, obviously, and any manager, when I say this, they need the players there to achieve success. That's not a secret. I mean, a team can have a great manager, but have average players and not achieve much, or a team can have great players and an average manager and win the lot. So often good managers' jobs might not get rewarded, and bad managers' jobs might get rewarded. So he has had the players, but the fact that he could do it across 5 different leagues with 5 different clubs, more to add to the list where he didn't even win league titles, but still did a good job at those places. Like, you think Napoli, you think Everton now, looking at what they are now. So he's just got to. If I was to do a list, he would definitely be a contention for that number 1 of all time. And talking about Real Madrid's accomplishments and Carlo Ancelotti's accomplishments, I guess the perfect place to end the pod would have to be on a sort of quick preview of what we expect to see this coming midweek with the second legs of those Champions League ties. I don't know if you want to touch on Europa League as well, but I'll give the floor to you on whatever you want to say about those ties as we approach them.
After watching the first legs, I think, and since Liverpool Villarreal is tonight, I can't see any sort of different results coming out of Villarreal. I think it might be a little bit harder for Liverpool since Villarreal need to attack, so they might be a little bit more on the front foot and a little bit more offensive. But it might be more of what we saw against Newcastle, where Newcastle tried to attack, but they couldn't really create many chances in that final third. But they could get to that point, whereas Villarreal couldn't even get out of the second third, like the midfield third, it seemed, in that first game. So it might be a sort of like grindy result where Liverpool win 1 or 2-0. I think it won't be a thrashing. But I also think that Liverpool won't really hit top gear. Won't need to hit top gear in that game. Obviously, the game that has everyone frothing at the mouth is the Real Madrid Man City game, and I think all we can really ask is how many goals do you think there'll be in that game? Like that I can't see that really being any sort of different game. Because both managers and I think the players of both teams, they want to win in a nice open game. They're not going to necessarily. They're not the type of team that would necessarily play on the counter. Maybe Real Madrid a little bit more, because obviously they're going up against a great City team. But I can't see City, for instance, sitting back and defending a 1-0 lead from the first leg. So they will want to go for the jugular and try and put that cushion between them, like a 2-0 or a 3-0, especially after seeing that Chelsea, do they put 3 or 4 against them at the Bernabeu? So they know that they can be carved open, and they're there for the taking. So I can't see it going any other way but a Man City win, to be honest. But it's going to be, as I truly believe, and I also hope that it'll be as exciting as the first leg.
Well, that would be fantastic if it is. Cancelo should be back though for this leg, and I think that'll be interesting, especially if he plays, and he probably should play at right back because Zinchenko will probably be the fullback on the other side. It'll be interesting to see if that takes Real Madrid out of rhythm in terms of what they do with Vinicius, because obviously he prefers to play from the left. But if Cancelo comes back in at that right back position, all of a sudden he's 1v1 with Cancelo, who's an elite defender. So they might want to get Vinicius matched up against Zinchenko on the other side, but then he's on his less preferred side. So that could be a pro and con situation. You get the matchup you want, but you don't get your player in the position that they normally want to be in. So I think that's a different dynamic to look for that will be different from the first leg. But I'm hoping, like you say, that not a lot is different from the first leg, because that was fantastic to watch. I hope Karim Benzema is still on top form, because what a joy he is to watch. Luka Modric the same. And honestly, you kind of look. I don't hope that Real Madrid's back four are as chaotic as they were in the first leg, because if they are this time, City could actually put the game to bed if they take their chances, where they should have at the Etihad but weren't able to. So, like you say, what a tie that one should be. One little point. It's not too far-fetched for me, actually, to see City go there and maybe not shut up shop, but put in a grit and grind sort of performance, because we saw them do it on their last trip to Madrid. Granted, a different team, but they ground that second leg out at the Metropolitano to get that 0-0 draw there. So, again, they have the 1-goal advantage. So we've seen them do it before. Maybe they'll do it again. I think Guardiola would prefer them to do it in a manner where they had more possession of the ball and controlled that way. But when you play Real Madrid, even if you have control of the ball, that Real Madrid are a team that plays on moments. and they have the most clinical striker in the world who not only is the most clinical, I mean, Lewandowski's in that conversation as well, but not only is he that, he's the striker who scores goals out of nothing, out of the half chances, which we saw in that first goal at the Etihad. So we know they're a team that plays on moments. So no matter how much control Man City have on the game, you expect Real Madrid to have those moments. So it'll be fascinating to see how that one shapes up. I think I agree with that Liverpool Villarreal. I think what we sometimes are missing in the first leg, I know idiots on radio have said that Villarreal's performance was a disgrace, which is an absolute joke to say. It was just a typical first leg of the Champions League. And what we miss in that is Liverpool, like you said on the last pod, Liverpool forced that out of Villarreal. Liverpool played a really good game in that first leg. They exerted a lot of effort into it. It wasn't the open game Liverpool normally play, but they put on a lot of pressure, particularly in the press. So for me, it was more a case of Liverpool playing up to it, the next level, as you'd expect them to do, because this is the Champions League semi-final, rather than Villarreal being that pathetic and whatnot. Obviously, if it's a Bayern Munich, a different set of problems, you probably get a more open game. But again, Liverpool forced that out of Villarreal. It wasn't Villarreal just being absolute crap when they went to Anfield. So like you say, it'll be interesting to see if Liverpool, need to hit that gear or if they do hit that gear. Because I think if they hit that gear again, there's a chance they could wrap it up early in this game, because I think a goal early should really do the job. I know it's football, anything can happen, but if Liverpool want to reach that gear again and really want to put the pressure on early, that will be interesting to see. Another thing you got in the back of my mind is whether he plays Van Dijk. I think he will play Van Dijk, but let's see if Klopp wants to get clever with that as well, because we saw him get clever in that second leg against Benfica as well. So a few interesting storylines, but when we get down to this stage of the Champions League, I just say bring it on. I can't wait to watch those games. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to anything that we've spoken about tonight, or
just on that disgrace point, I think it's a disgrace of the pundits to be calling that performance a disgrace, or those tactics, because I read a post and it said that Villarreal, they have I can't remember the exact numbers, but they have I'm just gonna pull out something that I think they have 1/5 of the budget that Liverpool have. Then they come from a town that it has 50,000 or 30,000 people living there, a population.
50. Yeah, we did that one.
And then a bunch of these other I think Villarreal, even that they paid for they paid for part of the travel costs for their fans to go to Anfield as well, and they did a bunch of this other stuff they've done a bunch of this other stuff to help fans and all this other on the budget that they're on. They're a relatively small club, but a passionate club, in comparison to Liverpool at least, and it's also stupid to call Everton's performance, for instance, against Chelsea, or even against Liverpool, especially Liverpool that they lost, a heroic or a good performance. And they did pretty much the exact same thing. Yes, they attacked a little bit more, but I think Liverpool, as you mentioned, were a lot more front-footed and ferocious in the Villarreal game than they were in the Everton game. So how can Everton's performance be great or outstanding, as I think some pundits labeled it, but then you call Villarreal's one disgusting or disgraceful? It's just, you can't have it both ways. There's teams are obviously not just on paper, but they're superior than other teams, so they are sort of forced to play in a certain way to potentially get a result. And we also saw it against Atletico versus City. They were labeling their performance a disgrace as well. You can't have it both ways. If Emery wanted to have his team get obliterated, 5 or 6-0 in that game, especially the way that Liverpool came out and the way that they were alert and motivated for that game, yeah, they would have got absolutely blown out of the water, and you wouldn't even bother playing a second leg. And you saw that with who was it? City versus Lisbon. They won 5-0 in the first leg, and then the second leg was it was a 0-0. Like they were playing for nothing pretty much, and it's just foolish to think that it's going to go any other way. And yeah, these pundits need to get a reality check that they can't get these sort of City versus Real Madrid performances in every single game, because we don't get those matchups every single time. Yes, we might have gotten something similar if Bayern went through, but Bayern didn't go through. Villarreal were the better team over the 2 legs. So yeah, they need to stop labeling these performances disgraces. They can label the antics, like for instance, Atletico's antics that they were pulling against City. Yeah, you can label that disgraceful, but not the actual performance and the tactics. That's foolish.
Yeah, and I think it's all for clickbait, to be fair. I'd be surprised if a football person actually believed that. It's kind of the Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith sort of drama. I want to bring some drama, bring some attention to myself and my program, so I'll say something outrageous. Just a stupid thing to say, really. But I think I've said all I want to say on the matters. I think you're happy, right?
I'm happy and looking forward to the games today and tomorrow.
Yeah, me too. Nev, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed, and just keep your eyes peeled for those ants, because we never know when the revolution is coming.
Super ants.
Thanks for listening, everyone.